Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Alain. It's Book Saturday. We're going to talk a little bit about History of Korea and Hapkido by Dr. Kimm. It's a big book, great book, and this is what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Hope your weekend is starting well. I'm drinking out of my book mug, all those books that I enjoyed as a kid. Been a lifelong reader, continue to read a lot. I hope that these book editions of Coffee with Alain inspire you to read. Maybe you see something I'm reading that you might enjoy, pick it up, read it, enjoy it, learn from it, or maybe it inspires you to go learn from something else or read something else that you enjoy. Doesn't matter as long as you're reading. But you should be reading the newsletter I send out from enjoylifesafely.com every week. Sign up for that. You'll get an ebook. You can get a couple different ebooks. Sign up for both. Those are good reading to help you stay safe. The newsletter, information to stay safe, enjoy life, and be exceptional. This weekend, one of the articles is going to be on helping keep our kids safe as they go off to college and empowering them to stay safe when they're away from home, attending college or university. So be sure to sign up, enjoylifesafely.com, especially if you have kids heading off to college or will have kids heading off to college in the next year or two. Get that newsletter. Let's talk a little bit about history of Korea and Hapkido. Now, I'm currently reading Dr. Kimm's autobiography, which is just as big. And I read this a while ago and just pulled it off the shelf and wanted to share it today. Now, it's divided into two halves, just like the cover says. There's history about Korea, and then there's history about Hapkido. Now, the history about Korea is interesting, and I liked it, but there are better books probably if that's all you're interested in. So, I have other books on the shelves on Korean history that go a little bit more in depth and different things than Dr. Kimm's book did, which is fine because it's the Hapkido part that was really something I wanted. The history of Korea, it's some basic history. Again, it doesn't go in depth like some of my other Korean history books. Has some great photos. There's Admiral E. You've heard me, you've seen my coffee cup with Admiral E Sun-shin, one of my favorite Korean warriors. He talks about him, obviously, because anything about Korean history, especially if you're a military person and a martial artist like Dr. Kimm, you're going to say something about Admiral E, who was one of the reasons that Korea was able to keep Japan from invading during that invasion. And so the turtle ships and his leadership made him a national hero in Korea, one of my favorite warriors. Now, when we get into the Hapkido section, the history of Hapkido, that's where this book really shines. And I don't know of another book that has as much. And he goes back and starts, at the beginning where Takeda. Here's a picture of Takeda, from Japan, because Chae-Young-sul was in Japan. It's argued about what his actual relationship with Takeda was. But it's obvious when Chae-Young-sul returned to Korea after World War II, he had those skills and he had the knowledge of the Aikido that Takeda taught and was known for, which Moriyusuba was one of Takeda's students and then developed Aikido. And he changed a lot when he developed Aikido, made bigger circles, put some of his spiritual teachings into the art and so forth, where Chae-Young-sul kept the circles smaller and more destructive, actually. My instructor in Korea one time, I remember him describing the difference between Aikido and Hapkido. And he said, Aikido, big circle. He's like, no, 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 Hapkido. And just break it. A small circle break and cause more damage. And so Chae Sul started with Takeda, went back to Korea from Japan, and then this book just goes through a lot of the key players and how different organizations. I mean, there's the Korea Hapkido Federation and Ose Lim. That was one of the three big Hapkido organizations for a long time. My first and second Dan were from the Korea Hapkido Federation. Then my instructors changed organizations because a lot of different organizations started growing and sprouting up and being recognized by the government, and you didn't have just the big three anymore. And so that's why my third, fourth, fifth Dan are from a different organization in the Korea Hapkido Federation. But I still teach that core curriculum from that I went up through my first and second Dan from. And again, the book just goes through so many key players and how different organizations started and federations went this way and went that way and why. And so really an interesting, great book for anybody that wants to know some history about Hapkido, and probably the most definitive history that you can find in written form. Now, there are other Hapkido books out there, and some of them, the history is minimal. Some, the history has been changed. I mean, I have a Hapkido book back on the shelf from a great Korean grandmaster, passed away now, but wrote a number of books. And it does not acknowledge Chae Sul being in Japan. It has a brief little thing about Chae Sul being up in the mountains and learned what he learned and came back. And I get it because of the animosity between Japan and Korea, because of the history between those countries. I get it. But the fact is, Chae Sul did live in Japan and did learn from Takeda, regardless of which count you want to take, because it's disputed on just what the relationship was. But some of the history of Hapkido, it's skewed. Some of the history about Korean martial arts in general, whether it's Taekwondo or Hapkido, is skewed because they say, oh, it goes all the way back to the Shilla dynasty and different things and throughout Korean history. And that's not the fact either. Did they practice different type of martial arts and fighting and archery and different swords and all sorts of stuff throughout Korean history? Of course. However, what we know of as Taekwondo, what we know of as Hapkido, those were developed after World War II. And a lot of different key players forming those arts. And there's not this direct line to go all the way back to the Shilla dynasty of Korea. So I appreciate the history books that actually show that and talk about that, rather than just saying Taekwondo, Hapkido, they go all the way back to the Shilla dynasty and they've been passed forward since then, when it's not really the case. I mean, it's a large book, over 700 pages, but it's $100 and some. You have to order them directly from Dr. Kimm, and his wife actually takes the orders and ships books and stuff out. Good book, great book if you're a Hapkidoan and you want to know more about Hapkido and the key players and different ways that it formed throughout those years when it was forming. So one of the best books on that topic you're going to find. That's what I wanted to share today. I'll talk a little bit more about Dr. Kimm's autobiography when I finish it. I've been sort of reading just pieces of that and reading it slowly as I go along with the other books I'm reading. But I did want to share this history book, because if you are a martial artist and you're interested in Korean martial arts, Korea, and specifically Hapkido, that's a book to give some information. Is it different and is it biased a little bit compared to some of the others? Yes. Everybody's going to put their own bias and different things in it, and you're going to find people that argue about Hapkido all the time. But I find Dr. Kimm stuff. If I'm going to go to a source, this is the source I'm going to go to. And it's going to probably be the best source out there that you're going to find because of his research, his knowledge, and his years in the arts, and knowing a lot of these people personally before they passed away, and a few are still alive, that were key people in the development of Hapkido and how Hapkido has splintered and gone in different directions. So great book. Want to say good morning to Dixon. Dixon's here. Dixon mentioned the turtle ships of Admiral E. Thanks, Dixon. And Dixon says, don't tell that no direct line BS to Jubong Lee. Okay. Yeah, and it's, again, Korea had different martial arts, and they fought wars throughout their history, but to actually say Taekwondo or Hapkido has that direct line way back to history, it's not there. They were formed after World War II, and there's plenty of documentation and stuff to show that. And so I get what you're saying, though. And again, there are some of the grandmasters wrote books where Che Young-sul was up in the mountains and came back from the mountains with his knowledge. He came back from Japan with the knowledge, and I get why they want to have that. Korea, being the country it is, having very strong pride in their country, and having their country attacked throughout the different years and invaded and so forth, and the occupation by Japan for those years, I get it. But we also need to look at, what really happened too. And Dr. Kimm does a great job of putting a lot of that in this book. That's what I wanted to share today. Everybody, go out, make it a super Saturday, and I'll see you tomorrow.